I'm so excited for this, guys. This is the anniversary of Ketones and Coffee. It's been a year, so thank you. So stick around because our guest today is a health and wellness coach. She specializes in both ketogenic nutrition and lifestyle optimization with a goal of bridging the gap between the mind and the body. Her coaching company, Wellness, focuses on not only nutrition and exercise, but her practice also highlights changes in individual habits, behaviors, and even creating and developing mindfulness techniques to keep you well both mentally and physically, mind and body. I love that. She is also an accredited personal trainer, also in nutrition, in weight management, mindful meditation, and more importantly, in ketogenic nutrition. She is also the host of the brand new Keep Yourself Well podcast, where she talks about keto nutrition and lifestyle optimization. I'm so excited for this, guys. I'm here with Kalli Youngstrom. Kalli, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you.
Wow, well deserved for sure. What an incredible journey you're on, Kalli. This journey, this passion you have for health and wellness. I was reading up on your story ever since you were uh 10 years old. You started competing, getting yourself a couple of university degrees and got them whilst competing at a professional level in bodybuilding,
Mhm.
then created your own coaching company, finding true passion through that experience. Then you had also competed in powerlifting, crushed it in the Canadian Nationals, broke multiple lifting records, and then qualified for the World Championship and finished ninth in the world. Throughout that process, with all your success, you found coaching people to become the healthier and happier versions of themselves, which is what gave you the most satisfaction out of all of that. You had accomplished so many things in your career, starting at such an early age, knowing that health and wellness was your passion. Man, my question is, where did that all come from? Did all of that come natural to you? Were your parents athletes? Just wanted to understand how you harnessed that so early.
That's a really cool question, actually. It's something I haven't reflected on in a long time. And I do think it really has been natural. I was always an athlete, and I feel very lucky to have been
Mhm.
introduced to athletics from a young age. And my parents really encouraged me and my brothers to do sports. So we were always super active, team sports and individual sports. And it makes sense to me now. I think that I've transitioned to being an entrepreneur. I've always felt very independent, and I naturally would kind of push myself into positions of wanting to be a leader. So I very quickly kind of gravitated towards the individual sports. Not that I
Mm.
don't love team sports and working as a team, but I felt like I really excelled in the individual sports. So yeah, I'm from a very small town, like 500 people, and everybody had to play every sport basically to have a team. So we were introduced to a wide variety of sports from a really young age, which I think helped to make it fun and just
Mhm.
give me those experiences. And yeah, I kind of focused in on my few and went from there.
Talk about that evolution for such a young age and then getting into sports, harnessing that love for health and wellness. How were you able to um, get to the next stage? What was the goal and what are you trying to was there a goal at the time, and what are you trying to accomplish?
So originally, I think the goal was Olympic wrestling. This was
Mm.
something that was always, especially as a woman, because there were very few women wrestling when I was kind of coming up. So from, the time I was 10 years old until graduating high school, wrestling was really like the be all end all for me. And that was where I spent most of my
Mhm.
energy. And then unfortunately, due to concussions, I had to retire earlier than expected, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but that's actually a big part of my choice in ketogenic nutrition.
Mm.
I talk quite frequently about that. So I was kind of between a rock and a hard place. I had put all my eggs in this basket of wrestling for a really long time, and it had facilitated such a passion and love in nutrition and training and
Mm,
recovery. And my relationship with food was very much about, optimal fuel as an athlete, which I
mm.
think came to play later on. But yeah, so I had to pivot, and that's really how I ended up kind of falling into bodybuilding. So to just hit on something you said originally, yes, it's all been very organic. I
Mm.
feel I've fallen into things just by pivoting and following my passions. And I feel very lucky to have had these opportunities as a result of just kind of following my natural intuition.
So you talked about just having that natural uh, inclination to health and wellness. What was healthy look like for you before keto? Um, because a lot of what we know now as a ketogenic nutrition coach, you would know that, because you've used, because from what I understand, you started keto after university, after you got your second degree, and you were still competing at that time. What were you doing at that time, and how did you find out about keto?
So I started I wish I would have, I mean, had I known, kept a
Mhm.
better track of my journey to keto and like had a specific date. But again, like everything in my life, I feel like it just happened so naturally. So it was somewhere between my first and second degree. So early 20s. Prior to that, as soon as you said that, I literally saw like an image of a Vector cereal box. Sorry, not to name names, cereal box. When I was like very first in university, I was still on the like carbs for fuel train, especially coming from an athletic background. I remember between wrestling matches eating rice cakes. I don't even think I
Mm,
had anything else on them. Like it was just carbs. And that was, I mean, still to this day, right? We hear it all the time. You need carbs to fuel, especially
mhm,
as an athlete. It's like frequent. And I didn't feel well eating that way,
mm,
but it's what I knew. So yes, I can vividly remember a high frequency of uh, sugary, marketed as health, high
mm,
protein cereal in the mix. And really just like kind of meat and potatoes approach. Like I was very balanced meals. I would say I generally did have a healthier diet in terms of eating majority whole foods, but it was on the higher end in terms of carbohydrates. I mean, lots of smoothies and things like that. I drank a ton of skim milk growing up,
mhm.
which now makes me cringe. I just can't even imagine. But like it's what I knew, right? It was
Mm,
I
yeah.
need vitamins, I need my calcium, I need anyway. So I started transitioning based on how I felt cognitively. It had
Mm,
nothing to do with body composition, nothing to do with weight loss. I was in my like early 20s, like 19, 20, when I started going down this path. I just had such brain fog all the time. And
mm,
I really noticed it sitting in morning lectures at university, just feeling like I couldn't focus, I couldn't function, I was not optimized. It became quite scary where I actually was very concerned that my concussions were having a dramatic effect and that this was something that wasn't going to go away. And somehow I put together that I felt worse when I ate oatmeal in the mornings. There's another example of classic. I thought I
mhm,
needed to eat oatmeal every morning. I don't even think I was having protein with it at like, it just was, this is healthy. I need the energy, so on and so forth. So I started with simply cutting out oatmeal in the morning and I noticed how much better I felt instantly. It was like the fog
mm,
had lifted. And I think I put eggs and avocado in first. And then slowly but surely, I just was really being intuitive, listening to how I felt, bringing in and taking out different foods. And very quickly, I had what I didn't know at the time was a ketogenic diet. So I was eating keto before I had any idea.
mm,
Because again, this was like a decade ago. It just wasn't in the mainstream. Like Atkins was popular, but I mean, again, from a very small town and a farming community where it just wasn't really part of the conversation. So I had never heard of keto up until this point. And I was also just starting to dabble into bodybuilding, where all I heard was classic bodybuilder diet, like chicken and rice. So it was kind of
mm,
uncharted territory. But once I started feeling better, this kind of spearheaded my own research journey and what I always call is like me being my own science experience experiment, n equals one. Like this kind of, yeah, it opened the floodgate for everything to come.
And you talk about having to start your own company at the time while you were bodybuilding, correct?
Mhm.
And you took on a few clients. And were you teaching them keto at the time, or what were you teaching them about nutrition?
So that's so funny. I actually talked about that in a podcast on my channel recently. And I started off coaching while I was still kind of on the fence with a carb keto diet. I hadn't
Mm.
committed all the way because, again, it was as if I was going against everything I'd ever learned
Yeah.
and the advice of everyone around me in the bodybuilding world. Um, so it got to the point where I was doing keto personally and had committed to, like, once I feel like it's once you've gone through a level of knowing within what ketogenic nutrition is capable of, especially for health and longevity, disease
Hmm.
prevention, there's no undoing that knowledge. So once I had gotten to that point of really understanding the disease prevention aspect, like, that was it. This is the be all end all for me in terms of longevity. Now, I'm a big kind of proponent of keto based.
Hmm.
So personally, that doesn't mean there's not a single day of my life I'm not going to have slightly higher carbohydrates, but I had committed to, keto based is where I feel my best. And also what I believe, based on the endless research I've done, is going to be the best for me long term, in terms of that longevity.
Mm.
So there was a crossover period where I was doing keto and had committed to it as basically a lifelong, but people were still requesting traditional diets and carb-based diets, and keto wasn't part of the mainstream conversation then like it is now. So I started having this kind of moral dilemma.
Mhm.
So there was a couple of years where I was eating carbs and coaching a more carb-based approach, and then there was a period where I was doing keto but still kind of on the line with clients of carbs and keto, and I essentially would give them the choice with a strong, gentle nudge towards keto if anyone was willing. And then eventually I got to the point about 5 years ago where I was just like, look, this is not what I believe in. I cannot, like, rest easy giving people a carb-based diet, even if that's what they're requesting. And I just knew that this was going to be, I say, the fuel of the future. Like, people were going to continue learning, accepting, and understanding keto. So I just pulled the trigger. I rebranded. I went keto only, and I've been doing keto only coaching for 5 or 6 years now.
Wow. 5 or 6 years, given it's now gained a lot of traction with the fitness community, right? But what is it like back then? When you talk about keto at the time, it must have been so disruptive to talk about.
Oh,
Is it
people
not?
thought I was insane.
Are
Like, it was, and like harsh feedback. And that's why it was so hard, and not to be dramatic about it, but it was really challenging
Mm,
to publicly be
mm,
one of the first, especially like in the online community.
mhm,
It was such a small, tight knit community. Like, I don't know if you know Dr. Ryan Lowry of ketogenic.com, Aspie, author of Ketogenic Bible. It was such a small Instagram community, for example, talking about keto, that I had the opportunity to connect with him like almost immediately into my, like,
mhm,
foray into keto. And now he's like one of the biggest names in
mhm,
ketogenic nutrition. And just because it was so niched at the time, we connected right away. So yes, there was a lot of backlash. And this was one of the reasons that I was
mhm,
very hesitant to publicly commit my whole business
mm,
to keto, because it was really going against the grain at the time. And, I don't think I was sitting down having those conversations with myself being like, we're first movers in this. It's going to be big. It was just more like, I felt like I was cheating on my belief system, and I had to do what I really thought was best for myself and really believed was the best and going to continue to be the best for my clients. And I'm so glad I followed my gut with it. It was really
mm,
scary, but I would get comments literally being like, you're going to kill people. This is
yeah.
not, like, it was just so dramatized at the time. I
Mhm,
think when we were initially making this public shift towards healthy fats.
Mm-hmm.
And now it almost sounds crazy to think
Mm-hmm.
that I had that level of resistance because it's becoming so much more normalized. But
Mm-hmm.
part of that is the amount of research that's come out in the
Yep.
last 5, 6 years up, to a decade has really helped open people's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And people just are fearful, right? Like there was a level of ignorance, and to this day is, where people are scared of what they don't know and they are just defensive of wanting to do what's best. So I totally understood it. And I just tried to lead with love in the sense of I'm not here
Mm-hmm.
to like harsh on a carb-based diet. I'm only here to talk positively about a ketogenic diet. And I think that's a really important part of the approach that I tried to take was you can be an advocate for something without being negative on something else. And so I just tried to,
Mm-hmm.
continuously teach as well.
Man, after 6 year, given its popularity to this day, there is still like some health magazine. I don't know if you've seen this. There's a health magazine that ranked keto last on the list of
No.
healthy diets. So it's still disruptive to this day. I know, the amount of information that's available to us right now. It's up to you on what you will believe. But at the end of the day, you have believed it before people even talked about keto. Like you had believed this 6 years ago when nobody's talking about it, and you had I don't want to say risk your career because you started at such an early stage in the keto when keto is not even talked about. You had went full force all in on keto, and that must have mean that you really truly believed in it, right? Back then, wow, your your journey screams consistency to me and grit throughout your career. But do you ever get days that you don't want to get up and do some work? You obviously fought that off because you can't get to where you are without staying consistent. But how do you manage those days where you don't feel like working out, or when you feel like everything is because I get those days where I don't want to do anything today, feeling down myself. It's cold outside, this cold weather. I don't want to run outside. How do you manage those days, or do you even get those things?
Oh, yeah. I mean, first of all, you're being way too generous. I feel like you're putting me on a pedestal I do not belong on, but I appreciate it. And we all get those days.
Mm,
The most successful people in the world, like I'm sure Elon Musk has those days, whoever you would like to put at the epitome of your
mm,
list. Like I like that you use the word consistency, and also I love the word grit. I haven't heard that for a long time. I'm gonna adopt that, but consistency is the name of the game. And I say consistency and dedication. That's it. And having a plan. I have systems in place based around discipline and consistency that do not allow me to not follow through with commitments I've made to myself.
mm,
So I say it all the time. I think, motivation is fleeting. It's
mm-hmm.
discipline and
I
consistency.
agree.
Motivation may be what encourages you to commit to a structure of discipline and consistency, but then it's that follow through. So absolutely. And I mean, this is part of, as you mentioned in my intro, why I work so much on the mindset side of things alongside nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone's capable of following a ketogenic menu they find online. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's not optimized for them, which is a big piece of the puzzle, but no one's incapable of finding a menu or, developing something on their own and being able to implement it. Committing to it
Mm,
consistently so that it becomes a lifestyle is a much larger piece of the puzzle. So I think that, at least 50% of
mm,
nutrition and wellness in terms of lifestyle changes mindset, if not more, like probably closer to 75%. It's such a big piece of the pie. And when it comes to something like keto, you know, like you said, there's still so much resistance against it. We also have to be really gentle and patient with people where, if people have been told that fat is bad for decades, it's going to take a long time. And so, I think that
mm,
nutrition is very much a habit, and it takes time to replace habits and implement habits. So I'm really big on habits, consistency, dedication, all of that. And yeah, I just don't break promises to myself. That's the biggest. So
That's
my
huge.
workouts are a promise to myself. You know, if I have committed to a training session, whatever it is, I really, unless I'm sick, unless I'm really run down, try not to be flexible on it.
I love that word, commitment. It's what does that look like? Is it a contract to with yourself, or if you miss it, what do you tell yourself, or what do you tell yourself for you to get up and not miss a workout or not miss a commitment? What, because you have to be at a level that a lot of us aren't, right? Because we tell ourselves excuses. We tell ourselves, some people can make excuse about not having enough time to exercise or do things to stay healthy, because they're so busy with school or work maybe, or whatever the case may be. In the other hand, you got a couple degrees, and then whilst competing at the best with the best of the best, you have accomplished these incredible feats while you're doing all of these things. To that, what do you say to people that um, are making commitments but cannot? Uh, Maybe they're saying, "I'm too busy." What to that? What do you say?
Hmm. Well, I think part of it is honoring the comfort you want in the future more than the immediate comforts you want now. Because
Mm,
that's the thing. It's
that's
cold.
big.
I don't want to run right now, but I want to be able to run a half marathon in a
Mm.
month or whatever the case is. I'm thinking about the marshmallow test with kids. If you've ever, have you ever
Oh yes. Oh
This is like
yes. Yeah.
psychology 101, right? It's you like leave a kid in a room and with a marshmallow on a plate and say, like, if
Mm,
it's still here when I come back, you'll get two marshmallows, right? Like
mm,
psychology can be so simplified. And I think often as adults, we overcomplicate things. We're very simple in our basic wants and desires. We desire comfort. It's a natural response. We want to increase comfort, decrease pain, stress, but we're not in a fight or flight situation,
mm,
luckily, most of us on a daily basis. So we get to opt in for these stresses. So I try to think of it as like it's a luxury to follow through and commit myself to that. And I think oftentimes we think that motivation comes before success. I
mm,
think success breeds motivation. So when we set ourselves up for little challenges that we can succeed in, it makes us feel more motivated to then push the end goal a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. So I think succeeding with a small goal first allows you to then become more confident and maybe, let's say, quote unquote, more motivated to expand and go somewhere bigger. So I really try to be mindful about not honoring the immediate comfort that I want and honoring
mm.
the big
That's
picture. And I
huge.
think goal setting is a big part of that too. Like
Mm,
setting the big goal, but then how do you break it down into monthly, weekly,
mm,
daily goals, even depending on the person? Maybe it needs to
mm.
be hourly. And I think it's like it's a muscle that you have to flex and it becomes easier. And
Oh,
the no
I
time
love
thing,
this.
the no time thing is that's difficult because yes, there's the like hardcore version of me that's like that's a like it's
Mm,
just an excuse. But look, I work with majority busy moms, and they will check in with me and be like, I know it was an excuse, but I wasn't able to like XYZ this week. I'm like, it's absolutely not an excuse. Like your day
mm,
is packed, but that's the reality of it. The
mm,
reality is life is busy. So what are we going to do with our busy, and where can we make time, or where can we optimize, or where can we multitask? Where can we combine like spending time with the kids while being active? Like maybe it doesn't have to look like a traditional gym workout. I mean, you've got snow there too. Like maybe it's running through the snow with the kids for half an hour and working up a sweat that way. So
mm,
trying to optimize, maximize your time. And I think too, really being honest with yourself.
mm,
Like sometimes
mm,
I will say guilty. I'm sure I've wasted half an hour at least, if not more today already. It's 11:30 a.m. where I am on Instagram, going back and forth instead of just structuring my time a
mm.
little bit more. And it's amazing what you can do with limited time when you're forced. And the busier I am, so right now I just started my master's degree.
Mm.
Thought that would be fun to add into the mix. So and I made it very clear to my clients, this absolutely doesn't change the time and effort I'm putting into the business.
Mm.
This is my free time. And what do you know? As soon as I add one more thing to my plate, and I started the podcast basically
Yes. Yeah.
the same month as my master's degree, I'm like, you adapt. And it's
Mm.
amazing the amount of time you find when you're forced and don't have time to waste.
I love this so much. There's so many things here. Uh, but how do you stay? of- How do you balance being accountable to yourself and also giving yourself some being nice to yourself? How do you when you do miss a workout, when you do miss something, how do you bounce back from it? Because you can't be kicking yourself when you're already down, right? But how do you get up from that? What do you tell yourself?
Absolutely. I think, these are conversations that come up in what I do every day, whether
Mhm.
it's missing a workout or going out of ketosis. I say that guilt or self-deprecation,
Mhm.
it's punishing yourself twice. The action or lack of action is done. So
Mhm.
now putting yourself through this like mental washing machine of dwelling on it, like now you're just continuing to punish yourself for what's been done. There's no undoing it. So how are you moving forward positively with the next decision? And I think that's the biggest thing, is learning. And this took time, again, very much like a muscle that
Mhm.
needed flexing. When I was younger, it would be like, wait till Monday, or like I fell off halfway through the week, I'll start again. And now there's a new opportunity to start right now. You fell off your nutrition at noon on a Tuesday, you're back on it for your
Mhm.
next meal, supper time on a Tuesday. This is such a funny analogy, and I am always hesitant to share it because I feel like it sounds very exaggerated, but it gives a visual that seems to work with clients and they will bring it up to me later. So self-sabotage is something we are all no strangers to.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, we could go down a very long path of the psychology of that, but the image that I like to bring to mind is, so when we drop our cell phone and it cracks. I mean, we've all been there. We drop our cell phone and it cracks. To me, that's the equivalent of you miss a workout, or you had
Mhm.
a nutrition day that maybe wasn't optimized. What do you do when your cell phone cracks? Then do you pick it up and try to treat it with care moving forward? Or do you stomp on it and just go till it's totally broken? I
Mhm.
mean, why do we do that with our bodies and our mindset, where we've missed, or cracked one day,
Mhm.
throw the whole day or throw the whole week or throw the whole month away? It's okay, now let's get back
Mhm.
on and handle ourselves with care, right? Like,
Mhm.
and there's just no damage that's undone. There's no damage done that's not
Mhm.
undoable in one missed workout, or right, it's that amalgamation that's so important. So yeah, I'm all
Mhm.
about fresh start, clean
Yeah.
slate, but that happens that day.
Self sabotage can also rear its head too when you're at the top of your game. It could be doubts, it could be imposter syndrome. Even if you're at the top of your game, you could have self sabotage as well. It's not just when you're to me at least. I think there's something there when you're trying to reach something and you're almost there. Just it's just self sabotage rears its head talking to you. Hey, maybe you're not ready, or maybe tomorrow. Let's do it tomorrow. Or it's just it's just knowing or being aware of what you're thinking, or being aware of being mindful of what you do, or what the consequences are, I think. And that's why I want to it's a great segue to mindfulness. You talk about mindfulness, how important mindfulness is, creating a sustainable lifestyle, because that is what we want, right? Because we want a sustainable lifestyle where we could be healthy, happy, um, and the ultimate goal is stay consistent. Right? Mindfulness is a huge part of your program. Why
Mhm.
do you have it added, and why is it so important to a the holistic, uh the overall um lifestyle that you're building?
So it's something that I really started seeing as what I believe was a gap in the coaching space.
Mhm.
And still very much so is, and especially in terms of healthcare, being in my master's of public health, like everything in healthcare is so disjointed. And I really believe we're doing a version of healthcare. Like nutrition is the base of the pyramid. It is the foundation, nutrition and wellness, and mindfulness, obviously being a big part of that. So
Mhm.
I was recognizing as I was going through coaching, and even in my earliest stages of coaching, which is like 8 or 9 years ago, there was nutritionists, there were personal trainers, there were meditation experts, but nobody was really doing it all. And then you started
Mhm.
seeing like the people who were doing nutrition and personal training that became very common,
Mhm.
and still is, of course, to this day. But nobody seemed to be really bringing in the mindful aspect. And so, with my psychology background, I started highlighting where people were really struggling in their
Mhm.
challenge to make a lifestyle change, where the self sabotage was coming, where that's stemming from, why, how do we navigate around that. And I really found that
Mhm.
mindfulness was such a missing element to kind of
Yes.
piece this puzzle together, because if we don't understand our own stresses, our
Mhm.
own cues, our
Mhm.
own triggers, our own invasive self-sabotaging thoughts, if we never take a pause to become aware of them,
Mhm.
it is going to be 1,000
Yep.
times more difficult to make a lifestyle change, no matter how well intentioned we are.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
think it almost always starts
Mhm.
with the mindset, but we're very like, we want results
Mhm.
now and we want
Mhm.
it to be easy. So we think
Mhm.
it's going to be easy if we just get handed a plan and, okay,
Mhm.
all I need to do is follow the program. But if the mindset doesn't shift and those
Mhm.
habits don't shift along with it, it's unlikely to be successful long term. And so as a coach, I really pride myself in, these are big shoes to fill. But I say, I want to be the last coach that you need. I want this to be the last program that you ever need to try. This is the last investment you ever need to make in terms of, a diet or anything like that. I want to figure it out and work to make this sustainable for you long term. Now, that doesn't mean I want clients to be with me long term. I think I've done my job where we spend a series of groups or programs together, and then they graduate on, and in 2 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the road, they can continuously update me on their continued progress and success and maintenance of their lifestyle. That's how I know I've done my job.
I love this so much because I think mindfulness is the key, right? You could know what keto is. You could know if something's good for you. You could know broccoli is good for you. But if you're not eating broccoli or if you're not eating the way you're supposed to eat, um, it doesn't change. If you're not taking actions, if you just know, that doesn't change anything, right? You have to take action. To take action, you have to want it for yourself. You have to want change for yourself. Um, More likely than anything, people seek lifestyle changes when their backs are already against the wall, right? They're already um, diagnosed with something, or something's pushing them to finally make that change. But to be able to take action, that takes mindset, that takes being mindful of what consequences this piece of cake will do to me tomorrow, or how I will feel the next day. So I think mindfulness is such a huge piece of the puzzle here with creating a sustainable lifestyle for everybody. Now, you talk about lifestyle, not a diet. Let's talk about keto as a lifestyle, not a diet. Different approaches. Love that. I don't think that, for one, is said enough and what it really means as a lifestyle. Two, why should we look at it as a lifestyle as opposed to quote unquote diet?
Oh, yes. I used to use the word diet
Mm,
really frequently because I don't view diet as restrictive. I view it as the way we're eating. We all
mm.
have a diet, but the general
The way
vibe
the way
that,
we use it.
yes, is that it's restrictive. And
Mm,
specifically, meaning weight loss. So I very quickly realized doing seminars and public speaking that people really associated the word diet with restriction. And it can be an incredibly triggering word for people where it, like, so many people have had negative experiences, strained relationships with food. One of the reasons I focus so much on mindfulness is because the emotional relationship with food is such a big part of what I do with clients. It's a whole nother beast that we have to deal with often. So I transitioned to the language of lifestyle because it doesn't reflect restriction and it doesn't reflect temporary, like that it's temporary. It is the base, it's the foundation. And this is why I say for myself, ketogenic based lifestyle, there's flexibility within that. For me personally, I am lucky that this is a nutritional choice, not a therapeutic must. So I do have some flexibility to go in and out, and that's okay. I feel my best not going out of keto, so I very rarely choose to, but situationally sometimes I do, and that's fine. And then I don't smash my cell phone and I get right back to keto. But for the lifestyle component, I like it because I think it highlights all of the other benefits of keto. So I say that we put the cart before the horse all the time when we think about health, and we think about weight loss first. So we think about fat loss first. And when I lose fat, I'll feel better. I think of it as when we eat in the way that makes us feel our best, energetically, mentally, digestively, we'll lose fat, right? Because then we're hormonally optimized. We're not eating foods that we have sensitivities to. Again, it allows us to actually be mindful of, how do I feel when I eat XYZ? That's such a simple practice that so many of us don't do. Well, we've been told, for myself, for example, told my whole life that oatmeal is like such a power food and it's so healthy.
Yes.
And then I stopped to think about, like, wow, I tend to feel unwell every time I eat oatmeal. Maybe this isn't a food that works for me. But we listen, right? And we want to learn and we want to do our best. And it's incredibly overwhelming. So we often don't step back and just think about like how that simple approach to like, how does this food make me feel? But the lifestyle component for me is, let's think about where you're most energized. Let's think about where you're most cognitively clear, where you can show up as your best every single day. And the weight loss will follow if that's the goal for you. And again, it was not my original goal. I do believe now it's something that has given me so much food freedom where I am never worried about my weight. I'm not worried about body composition. I feel so good. I'm able to perform physically and mentally at, what I really feel is my highest level every single day. But if you never try it, you'll never know.
Yeah.
So to the naysayers, that's something that I always say, like the magazine that's, I don't know what magazine you're referring to, that says that keto is like one of the like worst rated diets. Try for yourself. If you never try for yourself, you'll never know. And it's amazing how many of my clients are like, you know what, I'm just going to do this 8-week program. And like, I don't think it's for me. And then they feel it. And they're like, oh my God, like I had no idea I could feel so much better. And that was my experience too. So I say to everyone, even if you're a naysayer, try it for 3 months. Nothing undoable is going to happen. If you think it's the worst thing in the world, I mean, nothing dire is going to happen in 3 months. And I can promise you, you're probably going to have the opposite experience of what you expect if you do it right. Like, this is why I'm so passionate about ketogenic coaching as well, as I think that people really lead themselves astray in their initial foray into keto, where if you've had a really bad first experience with keto, you're unlikely to try it again. So the lifestyle component to come back to is that really for me, it's about focus on how you feel. And then also understand, if you keep making the decisions you're making now in terms of your nutrition and your wellness, what's the relative risk of your health versus if you make a nutritional change. So again, when it came to the longevity side of things, the slowing of aging, the disease prevention, the slow progression of disease in terms of, Alzheimer's, dementia, cancer, that was a huge part of my decision-making from a really young age, where I'm like, if I can mitigate the risk in any way by eating a ketogenic diet over a carb-based diet, 1,000 times over, I'm going to make that choice.
Wow. um, let's talk about tools for your clients. Now you talk about meditation, and do you employ meditation as part of your coaching process? And what do they think about that? Habit changes, behavioral changes. We can get into the psychology of things. How do you incorporate those things into coaching? And is there, meditation involved in your coaching?
There is actually, it's, I would say, a side component.
Mm,
It's incredibly difficult to encourage people to take time out of their day to
mm,
sit and be
mm,
still, let me tell you. So I encourage mindfulness in many ways. My favorite version of mindfulness is moving mindfulness, yoga, walks outside, but
mm,
being present and actually focusing on being in that moment, which we so
mm,
rarely do. I, within the last year or so, started doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which I think
mm,
maybe really sounds funny to like akin that to mindfulness and meditation, but you have to be so focused and so in the moment that for me it really does feel meditative. And that's a very common like descriptor, I guess, in martial arts in general. I'm not the
mm,
first to have made that relationship, but for my clients, first of all, I'm constantly encouraging it, and to the point of like beating a dead horse, if I can get someone to start their day with a meditation, it doesn't have to be 20, 30 minutes. I think that's one of the things that really puts people off of meditation. We imagine the sitting cross-legged with our hands in our lap, and it's like 30 minutes of
mm,
silence. And
mm.
that's not realistic for most people. We live
Yeah.
really busy lives. So my whole approach with everything in terms of nutrition, exercise, mindfulness, is let's be as efficient and effective as possible and make it realistic for your life, right? Like we're
Mm,
all busy. We are going to have trouble finding 30 minutes in a day to meditate,
mm,
plus exercise, and plus make our meals. So I recommend it for everyone. And then I provide resources. So I just recommend some of my favorite apps. For example, there's incredible free apps. Like the world's at our fingertips in terms of what we can access virtually, let alone for free. And then I also do
mm,
guided meditations on one of my group pages. So all of my past and present clients get access to an ongoing page where I do weekly videos and share resources, et cetera, to keep
mm,
them in a community and try to help keep them sustainable long term. So I'm still there to access for questions, guidance, whatever they need. So just 2 weeks ago, the video we did was a guided body scan meditation. So I'll record it. They can access it anytime. Um, so, and I recommend lots of books as well, focused on mindfulness, meditation.
mm.
So it is something I am constantly talking about and always trying to plant that seed. It
Yeah.
doesn't always take, and that's okay. It's not going to be changing someone's whole life in
Mm,
a 180. It's one step at a time. So if we focus on nutrition first, great. And then we can start bringing in these other things again, because as I love the word optimization, lifestyle optimization, maybe life's great and now you're
mm.
healthy and you're feeling good on keto, but maybe you can optimize a little bit more, bringing in mindfulness every day.
Yeah, I think mindfulness and meditation is just something that you have to do to be able to you also talked about having being aware with what you feel, what your body feels, and with meditation you stop and really just listen to your body, listen to yourself, and being present in the moment. And I think because I had been practicing meditation, I'm not very consistent with it, but I I really uh, had so much success with just knowing what my body feels like, just being aware, having that self-awareness, and having to delay gratification. Because of meditation I was able to um, think all the problems through. When I'm stressed I meditate, run outside. It's just I'm not in any way educated with meditation, but just speaking for myself, and whenever I'm stressed, I would run outside. I would run a mile, couple of miles, and it's just bringing me such great mood. It's bringing me to out of my just going outside, breathing fresh air, and having to focus in one, uh, you know, running outside. So I just really believe that meditation goes hand in hand with mindfulness. I think it's just my opinion.
Absolutely.
I don't know the science behind that, but it just works for me. So I'd like to get into the psychology a little bit with your clients. What is that you see from clients from whom are successful in your program, and what do they have that others who fail don't? What's the
Mm.
difference? Do you see a big difference? And if you could point out to that difference that helped them be successful. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I will say it's very rare. I don't know if I would ever say that I feel as though someone fails,
Mm-hmm.
truly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the accountability aspect that I work to provide through my coaching, I think really helps to negate the chances of that. Now, maybe someone gets through a program and for whatever reason decides keto's not for them. That is always difficult for me because I really believe that there's a way we can design keto to work for everyone. And, that's maybe we'll get into it if we have time, but, just it's like not ruining good for perfect, right? Like in a perfect world, everyone's eating homegrown natural foods. It's like, that's not, we're busy. We got to like grab and go sometimes and be able to navigate gas. And so it's very rare that I feel like anybody ever fails. I would definitely never say that. I tell my clients all the time, I'm never, ever going to be disappointed in you. I'm disappointed if you're disappointed in yourself. Like, let's figure out how to get around that. So a lot of what I focus on psychology is, positive mindset, the working around self-sabotage. I think the mindfulness is a big part of the psychology because we don't recognize our patterns. One of the biggest, simplest things that I do is to introduce people to this framework, which is a very basic psych framework, but it is focused largely on in the book, The Power of Habit. And so it's that we all have, cues or triggers and then habits that lead to a reward. So earlier on, I mentioned, we're only human. We all just want comfort, either increasing like feelings of well-being and comfort or decreasing stress. Almost all of our habits, we can simplify to think of in that way. Most habits that we have are either to make us feel better or to remove stress. Now, the biggest example are negative habits. We have a cue or a trigger, generally emotional, right? Or, psychological, where we're stressed, angry, overwhelmed, generally a high negative emotion triggers us to want to feel better. We want to remove that feeling of dis-ease. So we do something that really quickly, right? Like that immediate comfort that we talked about really quickly makes us feel better. So emotional eating, alcohol, things of that nature. So we have a cue or trigger. So one of the biggest things that I do, which helps people to self-sabotage and to talk about their psychology, is highlight, first of all, what are your negative habits? What is the cue or trigger of them? And it's very rare that we can remove that cue or trigger, right? Like life is busy, it's stressful, there's going to be hard moments, so we're going to be emotional. So instead, what can we do to replace that habit? Just trying to break a bad habit is very challenging. We can be well-intentioned and say, I'm just going to stop. But instead, if we replace that bad habit with a more positive habit that still has the effect of making us feel better and removing stress. Running is a perfect example that you used. Running when you're feeling like your mind is racing or you're anxious or you're sad or upset or whatever the case is, you can have that run be triggered by those emotions. And then you get that effect of dopamine, endorphins, and it has a long-term net positive effect. Whereas the negative habits, they maybe make you feel better, but for a very brief moment, and then they have a long-term net negative effect. So we do lots of different psychological approach. And I will say, like, I always disclaimer, I'm not a therapist. I have a, entry-level psychology degree, but the more that I've learned just through working with people, the more I learned that it's so much about the mind and the emotions and the relationship with food, the relationship with their bodies, the relationship with their habits over just nutrition itself. So that's probably one of the first things that I do with people.
That's the toughest thing because do you ever get messages from your clients saying, "Hey, I didn't eat that piece of cake yesterday, or I stopped myself from, eating way too much." Or, um, do you ever get those messages?
Oh yeah, like celebrating
Mm-hmm.
kind of the like flexing that discipline muscle. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Halloween just passed and my check-ins that next week, there was so much of it, and a lot of it too with keto cravings going down and people feeling a better ability to be in control
Right.
of their food as a result of being in keto,
Mm-hmm.
and also because of that mindfulness. So a really simple example of a mindfulness exercise is, say, let's say that no foods are off limit. I don't
Mm-hmm.
feel like any foods are off limit for me personally. With keto, I'm not waking up every day saying like, oh my goodness, I can't have carbs. I have no desire to eat carbs because I know how poorly they make me feel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not ever as if I'm
Yeah.
flexing this muscle for myself of discipline. It's I am mindful.
Mm-hmm.
So before I eat anything, think about how it's going to make me feel.
Mm-hmm.
Just taking that pause, take 1 second before you're going to eat or drink something and say, how is this going to make me feel? Or something, even you could take it one step
That's
further.
huge.
What does the version of myself that is healthiest, happiest, and feel my best, what decision do they make in this moment? That's a level of mindfulness that can help you make positive food decisions where eventually you don't have to work so hard to
Mm-hmm.
actively flex that muscle. It just will become innate.
Wow. Oh man, I want to be respectful of your time. We're almost over time here. I just
Oh, that's
wanna.
okay. I mean, look, this is my favorite topic. So
No, I
you
could.
give me a,
Yeah,
you give me a platform to talk about keto, and it's my toxic trait is I'll never shut up about keto.
and I truly appreciate that. Um, Before we end it, I want to ask you, how does one get the most out of your system, out of your coaching? If I'm a new client, what's my mindset going? What should my mindset going into your coaching be? And what's a good goal to have?
So this is so simple, but I mean, I think I'll say there's like two or three-fold things to highlight, but one of the most simple things you can do is hold yourself accountable by being accountable to me.
Mm-hmm.
On weeks that feel like they were not a great week,
Mm-hmm.
those are the weeks that people need to check in the most and be accountable with the coach the most, because that's where we highlight where the break in the system is happening.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we highlight where the mindset was falling off or what we need to do in terms of habit replacement. So the reflection process that happens, checking in after a week where maybe one didn't feel like they thrived. This is a no judgment zone. As a coach, I am never ever judging someone for having a tough week. I'm analyzing how can we make tough weeks easier moving forward. And now let's build your personal toolbox to make that happen. So I think one of the biggest things is if you're in a coaching program, and this is anything, whether, and this is a level of like, I guess you said you use the word contract to yourself, which I
Mm-hmm.
really like that. So this is part of like the contract that someone needs to make to themselves when they're signing up and, engaging in a contract with me, is they're being accountable to themselves by being accountable to me, because one day I'm not going to be there. So
Mm-hmm.
having that commitment to follow through, even on a week where things weren't great. And something that I do with my coaching is, even if we're doing a virtual like Zoom check-in call, I don't want to use the word force, encourage all of my clients to do a check-in form that is on my website. And we talk on that form about how was the week, how was your consistency, what was your non-scale victories, what was your stress level, what was your sleep, so
Mm-hmm.
on and so forth. Because so often we're just go, go, go. We don't even take a minute to reflect on how the week was, let alone what worked, what didn't, what was the success, what was the struggle. So that reflective process that comes with the accountability of check-ins is really important. And then actively adopting new systems. This is a lifestyle change. So it's not only going to be just changing your meals, it's implementing these other habits that support the lifestyle change. So on my coaching app, I actually prescribe daily habits to people as well. Meditation. I often prescribe 2 minutes of meditation to people. That's
Mm-hmm.
because when we start the day on a win like that, it starts a snowball effect, so on and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. And patience. Number 3, I will just say patience. if it took you 30 years to ingrain the lifestyle and mindset that you have right now, it's not going to necessarily be undone in 8 weeks of coaching. It's not fair to yourself to expect that. And it's also a very difficult position for a coach where we need time to help you reframe these patterns and the systems and the mindset. And it will come with time, but patience is one of the biggest things. And, a lack of patience and ability and willingness to commit time is another form of self-sabotage that I see all the time. So do the check-ins, do the accountability, do that work, implement your systems, and be patient with your consistency.
That's a perfect ending. Patience. I love that. Wow. Man, there's a lot here, guys. Check her website, kywellness.ca. This has been a blast. I believe in this so much, Coach Kalli. I believe in this so much with meditation, mindfulness. It really works well with just building this lifestyle. You have to have that. You have to build your habits in the beginning because this is your habits that you formed for many, many years. And you have to be patient with yourself because you are slowly building a habit that you've never done before. And so just be patient with yourself. And wow, this has been a blast. Thank you once again for coming on, sharing your story.
And thank you for having me. I love having a chance to talk about things like this. I think if we plant the seed with one person to make a change, that's so valuable. And now I can't wait to have you on my podcast next.
Well, we'll do that. We'll do that. Well, thank you so much once again, Coach Kalli, kywellness.ca, kywellness co on Instagram. And wow, this has been a blast. Thank you so much, Coach.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye bye.